Buzz Aldrin talks about transformative change. It's a term used quite a bit by XPrize founder and president Peter Diamandis. And transformative change are two words that I have just absolutely adopted with every bone in my body. Einstein is quoted as saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, I think if that's the case, aviation's become a little bit insane. It is no longer 1979. And yet, if you walk the grounds here, there is just no question in anybody's mind that there's tremendous innovation, there's tremendous talent, and there's extraordinary creativity, and there's a business model that is a couple of decades too old. That being the case, we've been working on an idea that I have been consulting with some amazing people, but an idea to build something called the Aviation Transformation Conference, an opportunity to bring, at this point, about 200 truly creative, truly motivated, and somewhat radical people together for 2 days. And the 2 days, simply put, are designed to do, one, define what ails aviation, and I mean to be brutally honest, to look at it, dissect it, examine it, and then to spend the second day looking at solution paths. Nobody's expecting solutions on the second day, but the concept is to build formulas by which solution paths can be suggested and thereupon acted. At the end of this conference, we're going to put together an organizational framework to undertake the solution paths that are suggested. We're going to start building upon the committees and the leadership that becomes evident over the 2 days. The event will be put together the first week in St. Louis at the St. Louis Science Center, tentatively March 1st and 2nd, possible rain dates, snow dates, whatever, of March 8th and 9th. So ultimately, the Aviation Transformation Conference is designed to bring together a diverse group of creative thinkers and to be as honest as possible with each other about what's wrong and what might make it right. There are people who have walked some of these paths before, and I'd like to bring those folks forward for a few moments. And one guy in particular who started a revolution and is getting ready to start another revolution has something to say about this, and I'd like to spend a few minutes just listening to Alan Klappmeyer and let him talk about what transformative change has meant to him.
The DFC-90 all-digital attitude-based autopilot delivers significant performance and safety improvements over previous generation systems. Its innovative flight envelope protection guards against autopilot-induced stalls, and the straight and level mode provides one-button recovery from unusual attitudes for an added measure of safety. Immensely popular within the cirrus community, the DFC-90 is now being made available for a growing list of aircraft including Piper Matrix and Mirage, Cessna 182s, and Beech Bonanzas and Barons. Fly with confidence. Fly with DFC-90.
Thanks, Jim. I tend not to use the same words, transformative change, revolution, and so on, but I would start by saying I have a deep, passionate belief in the value of general aviation. I also tend to think outside the box a little bit in terms of how it's always been done, and I've enjoyed these conversations with Jim and others over the last few months about saying, how do we take that to the next level? What are we going to do to try and figure out how to do things differently? This will involve a lot of different pieces. One of them, as Jim said, is leaving preconceptions at the door, because we all have them, even when we try and leave them. And that is relationships, whether they're vendor, news media, association, customer, FAA. We have all of these sets of preconceived ideas about how we relate to each other. The idea here would be that we would try and think outside the box. How do we really do what's best for this industry? What are our problems? What are potential solutions? And then how do we get everybody to work together differently? At a very basic level, I expect people to have doubt about whether or not this makes sense to try and do this by throwing a bunch of people in the room. I don't have those same kinds of doubts, because I think that without having a final outcome in mind, this is the way you get to new thinking. As an industry, we often find ourselves on the defensive. We are attacked from all kinds of different businesses or environmentalists or governments or economic situations, class warfare. And we need to start figuring out how to address that differently. Part of that is by being much more inclusive about how we do collaborative thinking. Again, outside the box, outside the industry. And I see this as one of those ways to do that. So it would be a program that would be slightly different than the way we typically do things, whether it's Oshkosh or any of our other events, in a different location, trying to invite a different group of people, and this will be tricky for all of us, listening to the people that we don't tend to normally listen to. I'm in the fortunate position where I get to talk to a lot of people in the industry, and since not everybody does what I think, they must not be listening to me, or maybe I was wrong. But more importantly, we tend to have the same conversations amongst ourselves. And so what we need to do is try and put together a group where it's a whole bunch of us that have been having the same conversation in the past, and a whole bunch of people who have been having a different conversation that we haven't been listening to in the room at the same time, figure out what that new outcome will be. So I commend Jim on this. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I expect it to be interestingly controversial, and I expect great results.
Welcome to the Aero News Network, the aviation world's most comprehensive news and information resource. Real-time 24/7 online audio and video programming, where aviation has been getting updated for over a decade. Distributing over 11,000 stories, features, audio, and video programs every year. Only ANN covers aviation and aerospace with this much depth, insight, and expertise. Check us out on the web at aero-news.net.
I don't like the phrase transformal or transformative change in this sense. Everything you do should be about change. It doesn't have to be transformal, it doesn't have to be transformation. It's a process of always moving forward. And I can make this observation. You don't quite know what you're going to be doing when you start out doing it. Now, I do disagree with Alan on one thing, which is that not so much that we need to disregard preconceived notions, but that there are some fundamental truths. And we need to understand those fundamental truths and build on them. For me, it's real simple. Flying is one of the greatest combinations, one of the greatest intersections of left brain, right brain activities that you can possibly pursue. And therefore, it's an activity that invokes great, wonderful passion. The second thing I know is a fundamental truth is pilots are just about the best people in the whole world. And being around pilots, being around flyers, being around aviators is always a privilege. It's always entertaining. It's always fulfilling. I think these are two fundamental truths that we have to understand and we have to ultimately build on. And when you start building on truths, you don't buck the trend so much as you just keep going forward, you just keep making changes, you just keep achieving things. That's the opportunity here. It's not to buck the trend, it's not to throw the bad guys out, it's not to throw the good guys out. It's to take what we know to be true and evident and make progress against that, build on that. And if we do that, then I think, because I believe we can all agree, this is an industry that's in deep, 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 deep trouble. This is an industry that's in very serious trouble. And in fact, its very, very livelihood or its very existence is probably in question, at least as it's currently defined. How do we change that? How do we improve that? How do we make this be what we know it can be? Obviously, I have ideas, Jim has ideas, Alan has, we all have ideas, and that's why this is going to be fun and this is challenging. And I'm delighted to be part of this, and I'm delighted to be helping on this in any way that I can. And hopefully, we'll produce some great results. Thank you.
Vern talked about transformational and the word. I guess the word would be evolve, because that's what we really got to do. You know, you can walk through here and look at the planes, and there's no need to transform any of this, but how do we evolve this? The neat thing about the way this seems to be structured, and I hope we have a chance to really put together the real forum, is I come from a world of politics. So if we can get rid of the politics of not only Washington, but we can get rid of the politics of even the inter-association, the inter-publishing and magazine, all of those politics, and work for this evolvement of what we all in this room collectively enjoy, I think we'll go a long way. So I look forward to the small group that's been announced now and the larger group that will be put together to sit down and really try to figure out how we can evolve the aviation, the small aviation community we're now in and shrinking, to something much bigger in the future. Thanks.
The culmination of the conference will be the establishment for the time being, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek because the initials of a organizational structure we call the Foundation for Aviation Advocacy, FAA2 for short. It has a three-prong approach, the principal portion of which is to follow the solution paths that are suggested on day 2. Another is to look at producing a more positive image for aviation using today's outlets and the information media that we have at our disposal. And the third, which is far harder to define, is a way for the industry to be a little bit more honest with each other and inside of itself, to celebrate the very best and to fix the very worst. It is meant to be totally cooperative, totally non-competitive, as synergistic as it can possibly be, and more important than anything else, done for the very benefit of something we all absolutely love. Flying, aviation, the business, the recreation, you name it.